record. Okay. So happy to see you. My name is Aurelia Munene. I'm the founder of the Journal Club, as well as Ada Africa, but also in my own right, I'm a researcher. I never knew I'll take this career in life, but nowadays I see myself doing a lot of research. That's what I do every day. I'm more on the qualitative side of research, but I still do quantitative, but not as much as qualitative. I'm now more inclined towards mixed methods. So that's the space I am in. And I always look forward for opportunities to journey with upcoming researchers. We are all upcoming researchers. We are all growing in the career. And I always look forward to those opportunities. That's why the Journal Club is a very important space, especially for us African scholars, whom sometimes we don't have very supportive environment. So I just want to thank everyone in the Journal Club. I have seen the spirit of Ubuntu spread in the clubs. I see how people support each other. We have people who give us, do peer review for each other. Yesterday, we had a very good session with Paris. She's in the Journal Club, and she was able to give a session. So let's keep up the sharing spirit. So today I'm doing a practical follow-up session. We had a session with Professor Auma, those who remember, and she spoke about scholarly writing. And we agreed that we have to focus now on the practical side. It's good to know the theory, but it's good to also have some practice. Because writing in academia, we are all scholars, we are all doing research, we are all, most of us are in school, or if we are not in school, we are teaching. And writing to scholars or to researchers and to academics is the way soil is to a farmer. So we can never escape from it. It's something that is part of our journey. And therefore, it's something that we can also nurture. As Professor Uma said last time, no one is born writing well. We all grow into it each and every day. So the more you practice, the more you write, the better you become at it. So today we are going to have a practical session on the use of voice in writing. Voice is very critical in scholarly writing because as we will discuss, you will realize that our voice in scholarly writing is always woven with other voices. So how do we do that weaving so that when people read your work, they are able to follow it, there is logic, there is coherence, and it's also interesting work. So that's the session we are having today. Then after that, we will have a short presentation from Louise. She's a PhD student, she currently studying in Ireland. She's part of the Journal Club, has been with the Journal Club since we started in 2017. And she's going to share her publishing journey, what she has learned about publishing and writing. So that's how the day is, and welcome. So let me share my screen, and you can always stop me for any question that you have. Yes. You can see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, good. So today it's a practical session. We will do some exercises on developing your authorial voice. Authorial comes from the word authority. How do you show authority and mastery in your writing? How do you ensure that how your writing is powerful, is persuasive, and you can help people sort of understand what you want to say? Remember, in research, the gap that we identify, sometimes it is us who've identified it. The world may not be seeing it as a gap. So it is up to us to use evidence to be able to say, look, this is an important area of study, and if we do not study this area, this is what is going to happen. So that authority is very important in scholarly writing, so that your work is persuasive to your supervisor and to the people who are reading it, and they can even consider to cite it, okay? So this is a very powerful image I learned the other day. I was taking a course on how to design learning. Can you see it? And I want to use it as a check-in, to check in with everyone, how we are and how we are learning, how our journey is, even at the Journal Club and beyond. So I want you to read the writing of the cartoons and just tell me on chat, or you can unmute yourself. What does it mean for you? What are you getting from this? So take a minute and read through. How is this related to your own journey? How is this discussion in this cartoon? How is it related to your own learning journey? This is a quick check-in. Anyone? How is this related to learning or your own journey? Any takers you can put on chat, because this is a very powerful, at least to me, it's a very powerful message. Anyone?
I see Paris is unmuted. I was wondering if she was trying to talk or.
Okay, who is unmuted? You can just say, I think this means, to me, this means what, or to other people, what does it mean? Anyone? Going once, going twice? So it says,
would I be able to contribute?
Yes, please.
Good morning, everybody. To me, what it represents is individuality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think particularly the last image at the bottom, where I said I taught him, I didn't say he learned. It's yes, it's individuality. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Yeah, from my perspective, it means that you can teach somebody, but does not necessarily mean that they learned what they've been taught.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else? Then we can see how this relates to our learning.
Doris has in the chat.
Oh, Doris, don't assume your learners always get the meaning you carry in you about a concept. Very well, thank you very much. I think this image to me is very powerful on many levels, and I agree with what you say, because one, it's powerful because we as a Journal Club team, we are constantly having many learning activities. We have webinars, but the question we keep asking ourselves, is learning taking place? Are people learning to whistle? Are people becoming better researchers? And my invitation with you to you today is, as you participate in a lot of learning opportunities. Sorry? Okay, someone needs to mute. So my invitation to you today, as you are participating in any learning activity, in a webinar, in class, even as you do, even training at your workplace, keep in mind, are people learning how to whistle? Are people actually learning? And I want you to look at your own journey. Do you feel you're growing as a researcher? Do you feel you're rotating in the same place that you are? Or do you feel that actually change is happening in you? Feel free to put on the chat, how do you feel about your learning journey? Do you feel you're making steps? Are you going back? Are you going around? So that then it becomes very important to have these evaluations once in a while, so that you can check with yourself, am I really growing? Okay, So keep that in mind. Are you learning how to whistle? Are you learning how to be a better researcher? And for those who are lecturers here, when you're teaching your class, and this course is a whole course, and it's going to be available for free. So I'm going to share with you when it comes. Keep asking yourself, are you too focused on teaching and forgetting the learning? So today, that's why we have this practical session so that we can apply the learning. We move from too much teaching to the learning. So let's get on to it. So today we are going to identify voice. In scholarly writing, we can identify 3 voices. And today we are going to discuss which are these 3 voices. And we'll be able to see how these voices apply in your writing. So how do you develop authority in our writing? Sorry. So when we are writing our paper, we normally have a key point or a key argument that is running through our paper. So right now, look at the research you're working on. Do you feel there is a key message, a key point that is running through your paper? What sometimes happens, and that's one way of losing authority in your paper, you have too many points and the reader cannot really understand what is this about. I don't know, maybe some of you have already received comments from your supervisor, or you are publishing and someone asks you, what's the main point of this paper? So please put on chat. Have you ever received a comment where someone is saying, I don't get the point. What are you talking about? That means then your core message is not clear. Remember, your research is one story. It's one story that has been broken down into literature review, methodology. It has been broken down into data collection, findings, but it is one story. If you realize you're having many stories, you have this issue, you are dealing maybe with soil erosion, and now we are starting to see issues of, let me just say, of fertilizer or something not very related, then it means that you're losing authority in your writing. So one way to make sure you have authority in your writing is to make sure you have a key message. And the key message in your research normally is at your problem statement. Remember, the problem statement is the anchor of your paper. That is where you are telling us what is the issue or the gap, why is it an issue, and how are you going to study that? So the problem statement should be your guide. Every time you're writing, keep going back. Am I on point? Are my objectives still talking to the issues that I was talking about? So one way to make sure you have authority is to have a key argument. And we encourage people in the journal club to even give someone in the club your paper, or even your colleague or someone you know, tell them, what is the message you're getting from my paper? When you read my paper, what are you getting out of it? If someone tells you something different from what you are anticipating, it means then your key message is getting lost, okay? So I've seen some people really hide their work and they don't want to show it to anyone except their supervisor, but we really encourage you to share your work with peers you trust so that they can keep checking, are you still within your core message? The other way to make sure you have authority in your writing is to use authoritative authors or literature that helps you to amplify your voice. Key authors in your field study, okay? Do you know the key authors in what you're studying? So I give you 1 minute on chat. Just tell me, write on chat, based on the study you're currently doing, who is a key author with whom you're working with in your paper? So 1 minute, put on chat, who can you identify? There could be many, more than one, but who in your current research could you classify as a co-author with whom you're journeying with and is helping you shape your ideas? 1 minute on chat. You want to identify authoritative authors that are helping us journey in our writing? Please write on chat. And if you haven't identified co-author, maybe you cannot say, oh, this I think is the main author. You can also say, I haven't. Because this is very important, because in every field, we have people who shape thought, people who've done groundbreaking research upon which people build upon. And it will be very, erroneous for you to be writing a paper and you don't have the co-authors sitting with you on the table. As Professor Uma always says, who is at your dinner table? If you're missing the co-author of maybe cognitive theory, who brought about a particular theory, then it means you're missing a very big piece of your research. You're missing a core debate. So let's see what people are putting there. Tom says, I have not yet identified. Waris Atia, though the question is not clear. Diana, you can unmute. You can unmute and ask me a question.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I missed the introduction.
Yes.
Not able to refer to you by name.
Aurelia.
Aurelia.
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Diana Homuza Malek. I'm an assistant lecturer at the School of Law, Makerere University.
Yes.
Uganda, but I'm also an LLD candidate at the University of Pretoria. So the question I'm thinking, are you talking about the co-author you're writing with, or the work that you're referring to, or the person whose work you find is very relevant to your field of study?
Yes, it is that one. Yes. Like, for instance, if you're writing on, if I'm writing on early childhood, if I'm writing on early childhood education, one of the authors I will always ensure I read is an author called Professor Hasina, because she's done groundbreaking work on early childhood, especially with children 0 to 3. So I'll make sure she's at my table and she's shaping my ideas. So that's one way of making sure I have authority in my paper. So that's what I'm asking. Have you identified core thought shapers in your paper?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Co-author is not the person you're writing the paper with. It's the person you're reading that is helping shape your ideas. Okay, that's what I mean. Okay, so let me see from the people. Isaiah says he has not yet identified. So Isaiah, go to your, I'm sure maybe there's a thought leader who is shaping your thoughts in your paper right now. Maybe you've not identified them, but there are those theories that your paper is sitting on, and those are the thought shapers in that particular field. Let's see who else. Good question. My co-authors are my university supervisors. Yes, Tom, it's not about who you're writing your paper with, it's who you're reading to help shape your ideas. That's what I mean. But I understood the question to mean authority in the field. Exactly, authority in the field. Co-author of mine is a professor head of my department. No, thank you, Ahmed. But now you get it. It's not the, it could also be your professor, right? Let me say that it could be you have a professor who is doing very good research and you're using their work to shape your work, okay? Okay, my co-author is Penina, yes. Wangare says Fingler in Global Dev Studies, yes. Not identified them. Yes, okay, good. So good, I have seen most of you have identified. So these are people who should be, whose literature should be in your paper and are very important in terms of shaping your ideas. Because if you're going to write, let's say about, I've seen there's someone who is in the plant, I think someone is in the plant sector or whatever. Remember, even thought leaders in your particular field. For instance, I've said Professor Sina is someone who is very powerful in terms of early childhood 0 to 3. Okay. She will also want to read work of new researchers. So you can imagine she's reading the work of new researchers, but she's missing key authorities in that field. So it's also important because also the thought shapers are looking out for new ideas. So it's always important to really anchor your work on the core debates, which are most of the time developed by these thought shapers. So in writing, we have 3 voices, and this you are taught by Professor Uma. One is the direct voice. The other one is the indirect voice, and the other one is your voice. So these are the 3 voices that you will always see. Even when you read a paper, all these voices are always there. Today, we want to identify them so that when you're writing, you can make sure you have a balance of these voices. Otherwise, if you're too much on one particular voice, your writing will lack authority. If you're too much on your own voice, someone will say, these are just opinions. If you're too much on using quotes, someone will say, but where is your own voice? If you're too much on using other people's voices, someone will say, but I don't see your voice. So today's session is for us to identify these voices and to be able to see how we can make sure when we are writing, we are balancing them and they're really making our paper very interesting and authoritative. So the direct voice, this one is, sorry about the width there. This one is mainly quotations. I'm sure most of you have written work or have read work where you see someone is using quotations, maybe from field study notes or even from secondary data. So someone, this one, you'll always identify it because of quotation marks. So that's a direct voice. That's a voice someone has just, that when you're writing, you may want to use because someone has said something so powerful that you can't even paraphrase it. And you think, I think this one I cannot paraphrase it. I'm going to pick it as it is, and it's going to really add power to what I want to say. So you can use quotes, even when you're doing your literature review. Quotes don't have to only be in your findings. They can also be in your literature review because they are they help to strengthen your voice. And we are going to see examples of how people have used quotes. Of course, we don't overuse quotes because I say too much of one voice means that you will drown other voices, okay? So make sure that where you can use a quote to amplify your voice. The other voice is indirect voice. And this is a voice that we paraphrase. So you read a particular topic. So you read on, maybe on, let me just go back to early childhood. You read on Hasina, you read on Auma Okwani, you read another author, then now you make sense of what they're saying, you synthesize that, you weave it, and then you put that on your paper. So this is very common. This is what most people do, paraphrasing and summarizing. What they are doing, they are taking the voices of other people who have gone before them, and they're using that to express their ideas. So indirect voice is very important because it shows that you are working with other scholars. Remember, what is very different in scholarly writing is that in scholarly writing, we build on what has been there. That's why we do literature review, to find out what have those who have gone before me done, and how can I weave that into what I want to say. So indirect voice is very important, and how you bring different voices to help you deliver a point is very critical. And we are going to see in the examples how people bring in indirect voice. Then the other very important voice is your own voice, your own idea, your own interpretation in your paper. Most people, they lack this in their writing. You will find you're using other people's work, you're using quotes, but we are not seeing your voice. So someone will ask you, so what? So what if you've written this and this? What then are you saying yourself? What are you making of this? And sometimes when I used to teach at one of the universities here in Kenya, I used to teach undergrad, and I would give students some work to write an essay. And I'll just see these quotes. Some even used to use Wikipedia, unfortunately, but I'll just see many, many voices of other people. And I'll just put in big red, where is your voice? All these people are saying this, but what are you saying about what they are saying? So this is very important, because this is where you also establish your own ideas as a scholar. If your voice is not there, it means either you're not understanding the text you're reading, or you're not able to interpret it. And then that makes you lack authority in your writing, because people are saying you're depending too much on other people, but your own voice, your own ideas have no space. So maybe on chat, or you can unmute yourself. You can just tell me, in terms of these three voices, which one have you seen has dominated your work most of the time? Which voice do you find when you are writing is very dominant? Or if you've been able to balance, that would also be great. So you can unmute yourself. You can reflect on your own writing and tell us what voice do you see is too dominant in how you write, and what would you like to improve? So anyone?
Let me start by saying I mostly write in direct voice, and I'm doing mixed research, which is a little limiting because I find that my quantitative professors would like me to be objective and not put my own opinions, while the qualitative experts will want me to actually bring in the ethic, you know, I'm really inside of it, the emic, I mean. So I'm sometimes conflicted as to how much of my own voice to put in, but because of using a mixed methodology approach, then I can count on the qualitative aspects to have me use first person and direct voice, as well as, but I find sometimes if I'm thinking in my mother tongue and I'm typing in English, that's indirect voice, but indirect, but if I'm thinking in English, that's direct voice. So that's my experience.
Okay, thank you, Jace. Direct voice, remember, is when you use quotations in your writing. That's direct voice. You're picking direct voices from literature and putting it, and this is in quotation marks. Let me just clarify that. Indirect voice is when you're taking other people's work and paraphrasing it. You're paraphrasing it, or you're summarizing. In the direct, you're not doing anything. You're just lifting what someone said in a paper and putting it in your work, okay? Then now your own voice is now where you're saying your own idea. I see the dilemma that you have, but I still feel even in quantitative studies where issues of bias and the researcher has to be distanced from the study, there is a space for your own voice, because you cannot just have quotes, you cannot just have other literature. There is a place for you in terms of how you're interpreting, the kind of questions you're asking. It may not be very direct that now I'm using my own voice, but someone who is reading your work can say, that's new, that's interesting, I didn't see that perspective, because that's where now you've put your own idea. Okay, so you're not depending too much on other people. People can see interesting things coming in how you're conversing with the literature. Okay, so even in quantitative, there is a space to bring out your own voice in terms of the perspectives that you're conversing with the reader. Is that okay, Wangare?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Anyone else? Let's see what people have very dominant. Diana is saying sometimes when I think I'm presenting my own voice, my supervisor will ask me for a reference. Then I have to respond that this is my analysis. is there a way my voice should be reflected? So we are going to see how people have managed to reflect their voice. And it doesn't mean that you have to say, I am saying, so that people can see that is your own voice. We will see how scholars are able to bring in their voice in a way that it seamlessly sits with other voices. Okay, so sometimes maybe your lecturer sees an imbalance. So they're just seeing, like, in a whole paragraph, there's no single reference. It's just you talking. It means that you're not conversing with other people. So they may say, well, I think your voice is too dominant because you're not working with other people. Okay. Then we have Godfrey. I always avoid direct voices. I try to balance between indirect and my own voice, but most of my ideas' own voice are either to disagree or agree with others. Yes, you can use your own voice to say, so and so said this. However, this has been critiqued. You know, then you can put your critique, and then you can put another person to help you in that critique. Yes, indirect voice, I use it, especially when someone has written such powerful work, sometimes these thought leaders, like one is called, even Professor Uma writes beautifully. There is also Odora Hoppers. She writes so well, you can't even paraphrase. And sometimes I can even start a publication with her quote because it's so, so powerful. So you can use a bit of direct quotes, Godfrey, for very powerful work. Isaiah is saying, does authorial voice come in form of identified gaps or how to bridge or how I bring in the balancing biases? So authorial voice comes from how you are, first of all, using other people's work to amplify your voice, how you're making sure you have a key message in your writing, and making sure that you're balancing voices. That's how you show authority in your writing, okay? I miss Professor Uma. Yes, we will share. It's on YouTube. We are going to share. Rhoda is saying indirect voice. I would like to improve my own voice. Louisa says the scholar's voice. Mine is still being found, working on it. Indirect voice. Okay, so good. So I can see that you can now begin to balance your own writing. Sorry, I don't know why this is showing. You can now begin to, you can see this thing of Zoom. Okay, let me throw it away. Anyway, okay, so now we are going to practice. We have 3 examples, and I'd like you to identify the different voices, and then you can say which voice in that particular write-up is very dominant, and how do you feel as a reader reading that particular work, okay? So this is an excerpt, just take a bit of time. It is a real example of someone who wrote something. And so I want you to find the 3 voices. And I think I'll remove the full screen so that I can type when you say a particular voice. You can see it. So I need to enlarge a bit. You can see it. Can anyone confirm or disconfirm?
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just read through.
Do you want to put full screen?
I want to type the response. Okay, maybe let me put full screen. When we start answering.
we can still see even now.
Okay. So look out for the voices. More the voices than the content. From this writing, which voice do you find they've used very dominantly? Can you pick out the direct voice, the quotes, indirect voice, their voice? Okay, can we now start? what type of voices are you picking out from this writing? Dominant voice. Dominant is direct voice. That's what Doris says. Diana says own voice is silent. Who else is? Someone is saying direct voice is dominant. Own voice, the mixture of both direct and indirect. Direct is very more prevalent. So what do you feel about this type of, when you read this type of work as a reader, how do you feel? Someone can unmute. And it's true, they have used a lot of direct quotes. So let's go to the, let me just put it in a mode that we can type. So look at this. This is a direct quote. How do we highlight here? Okay, whatever. Sorry. So this is a direct quote. Another direct quote. Another direct voice. Another direct voice. And you can identify them from the quotes. You can see the quotations. Another one. And another one. And another one. And another one. So someone unmute. What do you feel when you read this? All these are the direct voices. Then these are the indirect voices. Now where they are, no, actually, they've even just quoted, even where they have not paraphrased anything actually, is defined as, actually, I think it's only direct voice. Can anyone see even indirect voice? Because I don't see where they have paraphrased or summarized anyone's work. Anyone? What do you feel when you read this type of work?
There is somewhere in the last paragraph. I think it's the last line, the last sentence.
Oh, this one.
Ghana is defined.
Yes.
I think that is paraphrased until the potentially in quotes.
Yes. Yes, Thomas, you raised your hand. Thank you, Dana.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I want to take a slight different approach. I think some people will want to use direct voice to avoid cases of plagiarism, because sometimes paraphrasing, summarizing, it might be a challenge. So people will use just the direct voice to avoid instances of plagiarism being detected. I don't know. That's one thing I would think maybe. Yeah, I don't know how you'll say about that.
I think I would say in scholarly writing, you can have other voices without plagiarizing, okay? You can include the indirect voice, you can summarize, you can paraphrase without plagiarizing. So rather than avoid, I would say practice on paraphrasing and paraphrasing and summarizing rather than running away from it, okay? Because this makes, does this give someone authority? When you read this work, do you think this is an authority in this field? Do they show authority?
Definitely no.
No, okay, because it's just quotes. So you'll be like, okay, clearly this is not someone who has mastered the field. So I would say practice those skills of paraphrasing so that then you can know how to weave in other voices. I saw someone with their hand up. There's someone who had their hand up. Okay, let me just move on because we have
Redemptor.
It's me.
Yes, Redemptor.
Okay, for me, my perception when I look at this excerpt is like the author is a bit lazy and does not want to take time to synthesize. the literature, but rather just copy and paste and put in quotation marks. Because like you said, if you really engage your literature well, then it will be easy to paraphrase. And actually, even when you paraphrase, you put 3 or 4 authors who've said that, not only just one, to show that you've really done thorough literature review to identify the key authors and co-authors that have written about that area. And the direct voice should actually just be in instances where it's really necessary, that quotation is really so powerful that if you paraphrase it, you're going to lose either the meaning or you're going to dilute it. But some of these quotes that they've put here, they're not even, like, they don't really qualify to be direct quotes. They can as easily be paraphrased, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you see, they've even referenced, because I've seen people who say, well, but I've referenced. But as you say, you've not synthesized anything. It's just statements and statements of other people's voices. So, so thank you very much for that. Let me quickly go to the second one. Then we only have one more left after this one, so that Luisa can also share what she has learned about writing and publishing. So read this one. I hope it is clear from where you are. Just go through it, try and see how she's using different voices, what voices you can identify. She's actually writing about voice, coincidentally.
Make it full screen, please.
Okay. So we can have on chat which voices are you seeing that they're using, and you can see how this is a better one, how they are balancing those voices. Okay. Someone says the first, who is that? Don't know, it's so hard to maneuver this. Someone says the first and last paragraph have indirect voices, the other two have direct. I only feel is the own voice, second last sentence, okay? So yeah, I also feel so the same, okay? And think about your own writing when you're reading this, how you usually balance those voices, how you bring in direct quotes, okay? So let me just, let's just go to the, sorry. Let me just go to the, so this particular part, what exactly is academic voice? It turns out there is no standard definition. Which voice is this?
Own voice.
Own voice. Are you seeing how they've put it there, even as a question? Okay, so this is their own voice now. It turns out there's no definition, and that's a very authoritative statement. And then they have now to tell us what that means. In its most specific, some have proposed that voice, this is what? Which voice is this?
A direct one.
Direct voice. They have now used a quotation. So you can see even in one sentence, you can have two or more voices. So you can start off with your own voice, and so that your lecturer doesn't say, or your reader doesn't say, well, it's good to say there's no definition, but show me some evidence. Then now you can bring other people's work, either as a direct quote or indirect, to strengthen your own voice. So are you saying they didn't have to say, I am saying, but they just, you can immediately tell this is their own voice. And then now they've brought in another quote to really amplify that. So that's what you want to do in your writing. Whenever you use your own voice, try and bring in other voices so that they can be able to amplify what you're saying. Then in the same vein, Wendy, whoever called it, this is direct voice, okay? Others simply see it as a style of writing that is specific to academia. Now here they are using what? Which voice is this? This one is? Yeah,
That's indirect.
Yes. Now you see they've used another style. You use a quote, a direct voice, and an indirect voice. Okay? So now they've paraphrased what these two authors have talked about. Alternatively, Smith and whoever have characterized our own scholarly work as that's a direct voice. Let me just go a bit fast, which involves, wow, they're using quite a bit of direct voice as well. However, McPhail has noted that there's simply no consensus about voice, despite the emphasis that it is placed on. Which voice is this?
Indirect.
Indirect voice. So now they are paraphrasing. So given the lack of consensus, how does one go about finding or developing voice? Which voice is this?
Own voice.
Own voice. So are you seeing how you can weave in the voice? Okay. So you can say, you can keep weaving direct, indirect, and the aim here is to really strengthen your writing, okay, to look like an authority and to really show the author that you're in conversation, you're conversing with other people, you're asking a question, you're looking for answers in what other people have said. So this is how you want to write as a scholar. So the final example, let me just go quickly. The final example, this is the final one. And this is written actually by Prof. Auma herself, and Dr. Eliza. These are my mentors. And I just want you to see how they paraphrase, how they use many others to consolidate voice, okay? Seeing answers are coming. So someone is saying, the scholar's voice, mine is still, oh, sorry, that's one. Why is it so hard to reach us? Author's voice is coming out strongly, and there's a balance between the three voices, yes. So I want you to see this as, I want you to use this as a reference for how to really write in terms of balancing voices. And Let's just see briefly how they've done this. So you can see this is which voice they started with. Which is this voice?
Own voice.
Own voice.
That's own
okay?
voice.
So they are situating the reader. And most of you, I think you all start like this. When I read papers from people in the club, I always see the times that I have some time, I see they start very powerfully with their own voice. Then others just continue with their own voice, and then we don't hear any other voice. So you see, they say this paper, very powerfully, telling us this paper is about what? Then they now talk about the relations, okay? And see how they now bring in paraphrasing. You can imagine how many others are these? 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? 4 literature sources. They've read the 4 of them, and they've seen that these 4 of them are speaking the same thing. And instead of just writing one of them, it looks very powerful when you bring a few more of them who can help you put more voice into what you're saying, okay? So also try this technique of having more others, not just Baker and Ricardo. If you find McDonald also said that, put them there because they help to strengthen your voice. So we view these generational relations as intersecting with, whose voice is this? Which voice is this? Huh?
That's own voice.
This is own voice. Are you seeing? You don't have to say I am saying, but can you see? We said own voice is where you show your interpretation, your ideas. Have you seen how they're interpreting what they're reading? Okay. So that interpretation is very important. How they're bringing their own voice in terms of saying, we view this to mean, that's how you want to show that actually you are understanding what you're writing. We also take a constructivist perspective in which we view youth as a construction, okay? So this is indirect voice because they've paraphrased other people's work. And then finally, you can see here, this implies a non-deterministic influence on generational relations on youth, etc. This is their own voice. Then they strengthen it with other indirect voice. Are you seeing how you can write powerfully in scholarly writing? Is it something you see yourself doing? Is it useful in your writing? What we have finished actually. What we have done, is it useful in your writing?
Yes, it is useful.
Yes. So the main message of today is,
Sure.
Whenever you're writing, you need to balance these voices. You can start with your own voice, but then you can bring in a quote. You can bring in an indirect voice through paraphrasing to strengthen what you're saying. You can use a quote, an indirect voice, but the main message is to show authority in your writing. Whenever you're writing, always think about your reader. Always think about your reader, not about yourself. The one who is going to read my work, are they going to understand what I'm saying? The last point, no, in your writing, you're always in conversation with other authors. Show that conversation. Don't let it be a solo journey of you giving opinions or quotation. Show that you're conversing with other writers. And this is how you will see your work become really strong. And when people read your work, they're like, yes, this is good writing. This is very convincing. I can even cite it in my own work, okay? So I don't know if we have any other questions, but now I want to just please 5 minutes. I want to invite Louisa. She's going to share with us her journey in terms of writing for a publication, her peer review process, because when you're publishing, your peer reviewers, this is what they look for, okay? This is what they look for. Therefore, this is very important. Even in your workplace, when you write reports, when you write like this, you will see people will appreciate you better than someone who is just having one voice dominating everything. Okay, although it also depends on what you're writing. But scholarly writing, this is how you do it. So karibu sana Luisa, and yes. So just bear with us 5 minutes, and then you can hear a real example of someone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? So my name is Lois Masharia. I am a student at the University College of Dublin. I am currently in Kenya for fieldwork, and I research on the media and the war on terrorism in Kenya. I am interested in figuring out, is there another way to cover the war on terrorism in this country? And can we come up with a framework that allows us to come up with a way to, I don't know, mitigate acts of terror, manage conflict, come up with resolutions that can, you know, foster peaceful coexistence. That's basically what my research, the PhD, is about. Now, a couple of years ago in 2019, I was in the country trying to figure out how am I going to actually plan and do my research. It was part of a pilot study. So I came up with a way that I would just practice my project, but in a small scale, and try to figure out what are my perimeters, which would inform my field work. And I decided to write about my journey. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to tell them what it's like to practice content analysis. In media studies, we talk about content analysis, we talk about critical discourse analysis. And content analysis is basically the use of newspapers, because I'm working with the news and I needed to track down news articles. One of the questions that have always come up is how valid is your sample? How valid is your study? And I wanted to find out what am I going to do about validity? Because if it's not valid data, then it cannot be research. And so I was very frustrated walking into this field and doing this research. So I decided to write a paper on it. And one of the things that I discovered, and I hope we can share, because some of you have published and I am stuck, I hope that you can tell me about your journeys too, but I'll just basically share with you what I went through. So I'm going to share my screen. It's probably just one slide that you're just going to be looking at. So usually what people see is the success, the story, the article has been written, but what do people go through? So one of the things with a publication journey is, first of all, I would say answer the call. So I answered a call. They were asking for African digital research methods and how was that working with the media. So how to use media content to write research about media studies. And of course, it was very important to write about it because I'm coming from Kenya, and there's very little research, so to speak, according to Miller. Miller says it's still a dark continent. We still don't understand what's going on in Africa. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to write about it because, you know, you need to write about these things and tell your story as an African. So I answered the call and I was excited. I was very excited because my call had gone through, my abstract had been accepted, I'd been told to write. Sorry, I have a sneeze coming up. Sorry, excuse me. So I wrote about it and the abstract was accepted, as I was saying before. And then I was very excited about it. And so I did the research. I went through the process of writing the actual paper. I wrote the paper. I was determined to have it submitted in time. And so I did. And we wrote it with my supervisor. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a bit and probably share, if I can get it. I'll show you the paper. I seem to have missed it. The Word document, the actual Word document. Oh, here it is. Oh, amazing. So this is the paper. So I was just scribbling. We're writing with my supervisor. We went through this. I will tell you is about the 14th time I'd looked at this paper. I have a list of other pages that I just found very difficult to share. It's just read, literally. I write, she writes back, and I suppose this is the thing that they were talking about, your voice. And she would say things like, we can't hear you, what are you really saying, what is the paper really about? And so I read a book, it's called The Companion to Field Notes. It's a book about field work. And so I tried to figure out how do they actually talk about their field work and make it scholarly. So I'm not just ranting, I'm not just giving opinions, I'm not just complaining about Kenya, I'm actually just telling you what other researchers in my department also go through, but also globally. And the case of Kenya was very interesting because there's really little research, again, like I said, from Africa. So I'm excited. So my paper goes through the first time, and yes, we have reviewers coming in. We love reviewer one because reviewer one tells you nice things about your paper. They tell you how exciting it is that you're contributing to research. And then you read reviewer two who tells you, wait, what is your paper about at all? Would you clarify that? And what do edits look like? So I have chunks of questions about grammar, chunks of questions about how my sentence construction when you're talking about grammar. What am I really trying to say about Kenya? And then there's a reviewer who came in and said, you know what, you're lying. This is not what happens in Kenya. Tell us what exactly happened. You're doing a recipe, you know, like the way when you're cooking. In Kenya, we have a meal called ugali. So how did you get the sufuria? Where did you get the flour to put it all together? What was the size of your mwiko? So what was the size of your sample? Which universities did you visit? Remember, I'm looking for newspapers between the time of 2010 through 2020. And the only place, unfortunately, you can find these newspapers is in media houses. Now, for a student, the resources to buy the data is quite expensive. So I thought maybe we'll use universities. Maybe universities will be able to have at least some dockets of these, some blocks of these years that I'm looking for. Unfortunately, some of them keep 2010 and then they keep January and then they don't keep February. Some of them keep March and then, you know, pages of March are missing. So everything is upside down. The infrastructure about archival history is very difficult. When I went online to look for this data, because data is always being accessed and it's always been updated, I don't have a consistent place to go and find my data. So you want to link, and then when you go to the link, it's written page error. So you can imagine what that does to a sample set of 2010. It's a longitudinal study. Remember, I'm tracking a conflict for the last 10 years. So this became very difficult. And that's what I was trying to say in the article. Eventually, I wrote back. I cried. Of course, you retrieve, you cry, you don't know what you're saying, you hate yourself for a few minutes, if not a few days. All these things you have to keep to yourself. Don't write that back to the reviewer. That's something you just have to learn how to. And then we went through the second round of reviews and they really liked the paper and were really excited. They accepted the new paper. So now I'm just waiting for the decision, and the decision came back that I should at least consider writing to another journal. Now, the thing about writing to another journal is that, first of all, the journal that they requested me to write for was not a journal in media studies, which was very heartbreaking for me. But also the fact that in writing to another journal, when you're in your publishing journey, especially when you're writing something in an area like sciences and stuff, you can publish in other journals if it favors you. For me, it didn't favor me. So it has taken me to the chance that I have now to update the research because I'm still considering to publish in journals that are in media studies. I think for me, that was the highlight of 2020. The paper started when COVID-19 happened, actually. I remember because the day that we were supposed to submit, we had to ask for more time because we were in lockdown. And so the journey through all the way through 2020 to the end of 2020, only to get a decision that I need to submit to a different journal. Submitting to a different journal was not the problem. I think submitting to the different journal was that it wasn't in line, which is why I kind of came up with, I like this slide when it talks about focus. I don't know whether you can see my slide, the one on my PowerPoint, when it talks about focus. What are you trying to say and who are you focused on? I don't know whether you can see that. Who are we focusing our study towards. And it has to be, because we want to become academicians, you need to publish in your area. If you publish in peace and conflict, if you publish in media studies, I was being thrown to start. I think the journal that had been requested was an archival libraries something journal that would have been exciting, except it wasn't what I was looking for. I was even looking for something maybe methods and research methods journal. So in that way, then I found it very difficult. So that's where I am at. I have other manuscripts coming up, but I'm always stuck when it comes to, oh, I come across research that's new. And then so I stop sending my paper through because I've come across a new piece of research that I need to continually update. And in my view, that stops you from sending through your publications as earlier as they should be, because you're always constantly updated. I think in a way it's a disease called perfectionism that I'm trying to beat. I wanted to share this with you and possibly even listen to some of your journeys through your publishing stories. What was it that you enjoyed doing through your journey? Did you get rejects, accepted, and then altogether rejection? What are you doing about it? How are you working through that? It would be very interesting to listen to some of you. But for me, for now, as of now when I speak, I have decided I'm going to persevere. I am going to work towards ensuring that this paper gets listened to, because basically what I'm saying is that methodologies are Western oriented, in the case of let me use Anglo-European, Anglo-Saxon, when we're talking about methods. And the assumption is that because it worked in Britain, because it worked in places like in Ireland, because it worked in places like in Europe, it will work in Kenya, except our archival systems, our way of doing research, the methods and the principles, you cannot adhere to them to the letter because the context just doesn't have some of these things or some of these resources. So in a way, I'm also de-Westernizing de-Westernizing media methods, and I want to be heard. This is what I want my voice to say. And so I was just trying to give my example as a publication. I think in journals, they talk about something called reflexivity. So thinking about your process as you go on. And I hope as I update some of my research, I can get in touch with some of you, especially those who are in East Africa, who work in libraries. You can tell us some of those stories. I think that de-Westernizing media methods, for instance, is an area that we can actually talk about. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'll take some questions if there are any, but better still, let's hear some of your experiences. Thank you so much, Aurelia, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Louisa, because you shared a very important story that all of us here will have to face if we have not been on those publishing corridors. And as I told you, publishing is writing. And what you're going to contend with peer review process that is not always very objective and is also not always very guiding. Okay, so you can hear Louisa had a paper she wrote, they were given comments, collaboratively writing with her supervisor. Finally, they told her, look for another journal. I just remembered Louisa. I think that work, I think you can put it as a preprint. You know, Africa Archives, they are also a partner of ours. Put it as a preprint. And what did we say is a preprint? A preprint is something that you have written that has not already been published, but you can put it in a preprint server where people can already start reading your work. They can even cite your work, okay? So if right now you're having work that you have done and it's on the publishing journey, but you've not yet had maybe a place to publish it, please put it as a preprint. And these days, journals are now accepting that even if you put your work as a preprint, they'll still publish it. So instead of your work staying in your computer, no one is seeing it, you used all your energy to do it. We have the founder of Africa Archives, which is archiving all those preprints, is our partner, and she's a good friend. So if you need that, if you have some work, please reach out to me and I'll connect you with Joe and we can see how your work can be put out there even for you, Louisa. And nowadays, we are going to enter a very interesting project where we will even have, where there is now peer review of your preprint. So which can even help you prepare better when you begin now to publish. So don't have work there lying down, bring it, let it be put up, it can be cited and people can give you comments so that by the time you're publishing, your paper is in a good shape. So thank you very much for sharing.
I have a question for Louise. I'm not sure if there's time to actually ask.
You can ask one.
Thank you so much. So Louise, I'm so inspired by your sharing, and I'm also encouraged because I have a bunch of articles that I'm trying to push to publishers, and it's true, it can be a very daunting process. So I'm feeling really inspired this morning. Thank you. So my question, yeah, so I have a question around when you take a position, for instance, your topic is really delicate or touchy one because you are hitting at the status quo. There is a general way the Kenyan media would like to feature terrorism stories. And you're saying that we need to relook at how terrorism stories are done. So my question is around when you take, your own voice, do you necessarily consider your piece of work, aside from representing the African story, as also being an advocacy tool? So in this case, really centering a peripheral position or not so majority position, because in this case, I think your topic is so highly relevant. I mean, just recently we heard of a bomb attack a terror attack in Dar es Salaam, and we know that in East Africa there have been several, ongoing. This is an ongoing issue. It's a hot topic. So how do you balance the furor, or should I say if you go into, for instance, not academic writing, but if you enter maybe NGO, civil society, it's quite impassioned. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. How do you balance the very impassioned appeal on how we do terrorism stories? That is the language mostly from civil society. If you read a lot of their materials, the tone is quite different there. More persuasive. They are there to convince either funding sources or to lobby for support, with the more balanced and academic goals here are about to seek understanding. But of course, in the civil society realm, where media can also fall, is to actually persuade and convince people. So how do you balance those two? And do you consider that an advocacy avenue as well? And have you had any personal threats? And that's just on a light note, but I think your topic is really, really interesting. I'm even curious to know how you even got into it, but maybe I'll side chat you on that last one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wangari. I used to work in an organization where we used to deal with a lot of these cases. So these stories would come up. I've also taught terrorism. And so I would listen to what the military, for instance, had to say. How do I balance? I'm looking at mainstream news writing. So NGOs and activists, not so much that kind of media, because that's a completely different study on my own. I am, however, looking at them in terms of what you said, the language, and can we use more useful language to help manage terrorism in this country? Is my study an activist? Yes, I'm rebelling. I'm definitely rebelling in this way. I do consider myself an activist. If I use philosophies in my research, I'm coming in as an activist and an advocate for change. I don't think that terrorism is an existential threat. I don't think it should be here to stay. I think there's something we can do about it. I had been held at ransom, and so I feel that the helplessness we feel is based upon the media that we take in. And so if I can change or do something about mainstream media, then NGOs can keep up. I'm looking at something called constructive journalism, where you're basically telling stories that help societies rebuild, reconstruct, and push for development, really. it's a very activist kind of conversation, and that's what I want to keep at. How did I get into this? My students, it was the stories they told me in class that annoyed me. They drove me, how do you honestly think about that? I used to get very upset in class. So I decided to put it down. I decided to rant about it as part of my PhD. In this way, I stay very connected. I stay connected to my former NGO that I used to work for. I used to work for a peace one, and I still believe there can be peaceful coexistence in Kenya, in East Africa. I still believe that Africa can rise. We are in everything but our conflicts. And if our conflicts are jewels of pain, then we can move on. We can reconstruct, we can rebuild our societies. So that's where I come into my project. As when I look at Dar es Salaam, the incident and Mozambique, as you would know, I look at it from a point of view that we're only taking in what we are being given. So it's like communication is one way rather than two ways. And it's time we fought back. We actually spoke from a very knowledgeable, from a very informed point of view. We need to start questioning what the media is telling us, because everything is framed. And so in this way, then you're right. I'm an advocate for change in that way. And so I'm using my research to do the same. Thank you so much for your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think now we will, if you have any comment, chat, please put it down. I think I just want to tie in what Louisa has said and the question Joyce asked and what we are doing today. Joyce was concerned that maybe Louisa's study will be very activist. And these days, there is a term called scholar activists. And activists who are scholars, and they're trying to challenge the power asymmetries, trying to challenge the injustices within the systems, within how we do things. So there is a term like scholar activists, and I also want to grow into that because I think we cannot separate activism, especially in Africa, and scholarship. But how do you balance when you're writing so that you're not looking like too much of Hakietu in your writing? It is in the voices. So you put your voice there, you make your point, and then bring other voices, whether indirect or direct, to help you say what you want to say, to show it is not just me who is concerned about this. So and so also said about this. And I think that's how you balance your scholar activism in your writing, by balancing the three voices that we have talked about. And then someone reading it to be like, wow, I think this is an issue. You mean all these people are talking about it? I think this is an issue worth looking into. So use writing also in that way. Yeah. So is there any burning question? Because we are done now. I just want to wish you a very, thank you so much, Louisa, for sharing your journey. I just want to wish you a good writing. Please practice. Go back now to your literature review and to your writing. Try and see which voices are dominating there and how you can begin to balance, bringing in your voice. I'm going to share the last example, which all of you said balanced very well the three voices. And you can use that when you're writing to see how you can do that with an example. Okay? So I hope this was a good, useful session for you as it was for me. And let me just read the final chats. Thank you, Aurelia. Thank you, Louisa. And yes, for highlighting voice. I can't see all the chats. I don't know how, but I can see all good. Okay. So I think we are done now. I wish you go forth and now write well. And you'll see once you balance voices, you'll see how your writing will change very fast. And people will now begin to appreciate you as a writer. So take care, be blessed.
Thank you, Aurelia. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
So Louisa, please say something. Yes, sorry.
No, I just remembered Wangari asked me whether I'd ever been threatened. I've never been threatened.
Okay, just checking. Thanks.
Okay, so take care, everyone. Go forth and write well. Yes, and if you have questions, you can always ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just hang on for a minute or two. If anyone has a question, then I also go away.
Thank you, Aurelia. I would like to thank you very much for giving us this opportunity of hearing what we have heard. The voices, the difference is in the voices in writing. And I think I have gathered the courage to even want to share with you a paper that I have presented in a conference, and the paper never got published. I think I didn't quite understand the reason why, but I guess it's about the voices. There was so much of my voice in it, and I think I would like to send it over for, you called it a preprint?
Yes, to the preprint.
Yes, I have tried to publish. I have had 3 published papers after my PhD work. And this was the 4th one that I was trying to push through. It never worked, but I'm going to send it over. That was very encouraging.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're most welcome.
Hi,
Yes,
Aurelia.
yes.
How are you?
Thank you.
Hi.
Bye.
Sorry, I think there's a lapse, a delay on my line here. I have a question about tone in our own tone, the use of tone, T-O-N-E.
Yes.
In our own voice. Because you spoke about scholarly activism. How do we not come off too abrasive, but come off also very clear and very confident? What has been your experience?
I think my experience has been, thank you for that question. It's actually very important. I think my experience has been in the choice of words, okay? So the words you choose are very important. In writing, in scholarly work, we always say we have to take a position of humility, because you never know. You can't quite say you know something. You can't quite say you're very certain. So words that show activism but are persuasive could be words like me saying, I wish to argue, I wish to contend. And I had a paper with those words. I have a few words I can show you that help to show your activism. You're doing activism, but you're not on people's faces. So I would not use a word like you must do this now, you should. I wouldn't work. I would say if we don't do this, the urgency, this issue demands urgency. It should be, it warrants attention, urgent attention. I would choose words very carefully, and I think I'll show you some of those words that can help you argue strongly, but you're not rubbing people in weird ways.
Thank you. Yeah.
So it's words. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And this was a beautiful session. Thank you very much.
Most welcome. Okay, goodbye now. Go enjoy your Saturday. Luisa has shared something on Amazon. Maybe Luisa, you can also share on the clubs.
I will.
Thank you for sharing your amazing journey. Preprint, You're taking that work to the preprint.
Thank you. Bye.